Assalamu alaikum and welcome to session 90 of the Seerah through our HISC sessions, Harvard Islamic Study Circle, and thank you for all the warm words of support from people who are watching online. And just to recap, we're probably not today, inshallah, we'll be talking about the actual fighting, the battle, but we'll be talking about what happens right up until the morning of the battle, inshallah. So just again, setting the scene very briefly, because it is all contextualized, it is really important, and Allah does refer to the Battle of Badr as the most decisive day in itself. You know, it is quite defining in terms of the life of the Prophet ﷺ, the Muslims, and the establishment of Islam. And certainly it's up there in terms of the Hijrah as momentous events for the Muslims. So following the Ghazwa of Busheira, where the Prophet ﷺ was unable to intercept the caravan headed by Abu Yusuf on its way up to Syria, he then got his intelligence service out there, scouting the areas to see what other caravans there were, and also then to find out news about when the caravan was returning, what route it was going to take, and then, you know, if they could intercept it. And then news came from his intelligence service that actually the caravan's returning, 1,000-strong camels protected only by 40 guards, and each camel was laden with goods. So the Prophet ﷺ immediately, as soon as he heard that intel, said, right, we're going, whoever's with me now, let's go. And then they galloped out of Medina. Well, I say gallop, there's only 2 horses, but they rushed straight out of Medina to intercept the caravan. And it was just purely an economic intervention against the Quraish and their economic interests. So they were lightly armed, 315 or so of them, lightly armed, just to overpower 40 guards for this caravan and bring back, a huge amount of wealth for the Muslims. But then Abu Sufyan gets tipped off, and then on the way back, he asks people, have people been scouting, or have you seen anyone that you don't recognize? And then he finds the dung of some of the camels of the Muslim scouts, the spies, and he recognizes that these are fed from Medina. So he reroutes, goes to the coastal path, to swing round past Medina and then outflanking Prophet ﷺ. Prophet ﷺ doesn't know this. In the meantime, Abu Sufyan, he sends Damdam al-Ghafari back to Makkah urgently to get them to come and defend the caravan. And Damdam, a story linked to the dream of Atika, where he sort of chops the camel's nose off and the ears and then rips his clothes and really causes a scene, which gathers primes everyone in Makkah. And then, within a few short hours, they were 1,300 strong. And then, obviously, Abu Jahl probably sits down with Damdam and gets the actual information, so he knows what's going on precisely. So the army of the Quraish, they march out ready to defend the caravan, and Abu Jahl, he rounds up all the usual suspects, all the tribal leaders, all the noblemen, and he entices them all to come except Abu Lahab, who stays behind as head of Banu Hashim, and for whatever other reasons he stayed behind. But all the other noblemen were out in the army, apart from Abu Sufyan, who's obviously in charge of the caravan. So all the noblemen, they march out. And again, they're not prepared necessarily for war, they're just there to defend the caravan. Then when Abu Sufyan, he managed to reroute, send another message to the army saying, look, step down, no, I've evaded attack, the caravan is safe. And then when the Quraish get that information, they're arguing, well, the goods are safe. There's no reason now to rush out. But Abu Jahl, as being the pharaoh of his times, he makes sure they all march on, apart from the tribe of Banu Zahra, led by Al-Akhnas, who then decide 300 strong that there's no point in them fighting, so they come back. Whereas the others, like Utbah ibn Rabia, Uqba ibn Abu Mu'ayyid, Umayyah bin Khalaf, they've all been goaded into coming along to fight. And then even then, when they realise that there's not actually going to be fighting, they just go there. Well, they're going in their pomp in the ceremony. Abu Jahl says, it doesn't matter if the caravan is safe, we're just going to make a big display. We're going to head out and we're going to camp on the plain of Badr, have festivities, basically have a party, so that all of Arabia will know of our strength. So they're out trying to just show off, essentially. And then we have the story of Shaitan transfiguring himself into Suraq bin Malik to reassure the Quraysh, to keep them on their purpose for battle, that Banu Bakr, they're not going to go back and attack Makkah in their absence. In the meantime, the Prophet ﷺ, he's out again expecting the caravan. Here there are about 313 plus of them, mainly sort of 61 from the Aus, 170 from the Khazraj, and the other 80 plus from the Muhajir. So mainly Ansar only had 2 horses between them, and they had to share camels, about 70 camels between the 300, and so they had to share camels. But they're going out to intercept the caravan. So so that's where we're at. So Prophet, he's now hearing rumours that actually, through the Bedouin network of information, that actually the caravans slipped, given them the slip, and he's obviously sending out his own intel officers as well. The caravan's given them the slip, and actually there might be an army or a bigger group of people that have left Makkah to defend the caravan. So he's hearing these rumours, and the rest of the army's hearing these rumours, and again it's causing some of them to waver. And the Prophet ﷺ, he's then shown a dream by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that he would be fighting an army. Now, he himself doesn't know whether this is at Badr or this is in some future date, a few months or years ahead. He knows that he has seen an army and he's fighting the army. And then Allah promises him, well, even if you are to see an army or the caravan, you'll be victorious. Whichever one you face, you're going to win. But not the nature of the victory, but just the fact that they will win. And so the Prophet ﷺ, he hears these rumours. He's commander-in-chief. He knows, that there is uncertainty in his rank. So then he sort of tests the will of his group of men, his army, his little battalion, and he says, look, what if you were what if the Quraish knew of us and sent some people? So not painting it in the full picture. And the response that he would get from the army is, look, we're not prepared to meet these other people. We're just here for the caravan. It was going to be a quick attack, grab, raid, and then come back with the spoil. So we're not expecting an army. And then he tests them on the second day, and again similar response. But some books of Seerah say it's more resolute response from the Sahabi that they're not ready for fighting a proper army. And this is referenced, some say, in the Qur'an, where Allah says it again in Surah Al-Anfal in translation, that when your Lord tells you to go out of your houses, but the truth was with you, a group of believers did not like it and began arguing with you even after it was made clear to them, and it was as if you were dragging them to their deaths. So, there is a reluctance to fight, even though victory has been promised, even though they're with the Prophet ﷺ, there is still that innate resistance and reluctance amongst the Muslims, and these are the best of the best, to actually have that face-to-face combat on the battlefield, because you just don't know what's going to happen to yourself. So there is that, despite the fact that Allah had promised them victory, it was made clear to them, there was still that apprehension, and that's only natural for any human being. They wanted the caravan, they didn't want the fight. And this was also referenced when the Muslims themselves, the Prophet sent out some of his some other sort of scouts and intel officers, including Ali bin Abi Talib, Al-Zubair bin Al-Awam, and Sa'd bin Abi Waqqas, to find out more information to see if the rumours are actually true. And they find two slaves who belong to the Quraishi army, and they start interrogating him. And this is when the Prophet ﷺ, he comes back from meeting the Bedouin and gets absolute confirmation that an army has left Makkah, because the Bedouin said, news is it reached me that Muhammad and his army have left Yathrib on this such and such a date, and if that is the case, they will be camped here. That was correct. And the army of the Quraish have left Makkah on such and such a date, and if that information is correct, they would now be here. So he's got it verified independently for himself. Him and Abu Bakr went, that there is an army. And he said to the Bedouin, we are from water, one of the aspects of Thawriya. And then he walked off. And then he comes back and he's praying. First thing he does, he comes back and he prays. And these scouts, they've captured these two people and start roughing them up. And these people are just saying, we're from the army of Quraish. And the Muslims aren't accepting. They cannot fathom that. An army? What are you talking about, an army? We're just here for the caravan. And they're hoping beyond hope that it's just the caravan. And they start roughing up these couple of slaves who then, okay, fine, we're from the caravan. And then they go, well, tell us about the caravan. He goes, well, no, we're from the army. And they list, the people in the army, and the Muslims can't accept that. Even when it's staring them in the face, they can't accept the fact that they're now facing an army. The Prophet, he says, leave them alone. He finishes praying, leave them alone. Goes to them and said, okay, fine. How many in your army? He goes, well, we're just slaves. We don't know. Well, how many, camels do you slaughter? Sometimes 9, sometimes 10. So he goes, there's an army that's nearly 1,000 strong. So now it's confirmed, and the rumours have been confirmed, and the whole Muslim army now gets to know these. And the Prophet, he asks these people, okay, then who, you don't know how many are in the army, but who is with you? And then these two says, oh, well, there's Umayyah bin Khalaf, Utbah bin Abi Rabia, Shaiba, Suhail bin Amr, Abu Jahl. And the Prophet, his face lights up, and he's really happy. The Muslims are petrified now, but the Prophet is really happy because he knows that he has been given victory. And he turns to the Muslims and says, the Quraysh have offered you up their best of their crop. So these are the the most noblemen of the Quraish, and the Muslim army, they are actually really scared, because these are the most noble. They are going to be well equipped. They're going to be fully armed. Okay, and so the Prophet he sees this in their faces, and he tries to sort of motivate them, and he says, okay, look, they're going to be killed, and then later on he says, that's the place where Abu Jahl will be killed, that's the place where Suhail will be killed, that's the place where Umayyah will be killed, as a way of motivating them. And again, this is referenced in the Qur'an. Allah says, and your Lord caused you to go out from your home with truth, and verily a party of the believers disliked it, disputing with you concerning the truth after it was made clear, as if they were being driven to their deaths while they were looking at it. So now the Prophet ﷺ, he sits down and he asks for advice, because it's clear it's not the caravan. Abundantly clear. There's no shadow of a doubt. So then he asks, "O people, give me counsel." So Abu Bakr stands up and he says, we will support you, we will fight, etc., etc. And then he sits down, and Prophet thanks him, and then he goes, "Oh, people, give me counsel." And then Umar, he stands up and he says, similar to Abu Bakr, that's it, we're in it, we're going to fight, we're going to support you. And he sits down, Prophet thanks him. And then he asks, "Give me counsel," a third time. And then Al-Muqdad bin Amr, he stands up and he says some beautiful words, and these are recorded. "O Messenger of Allah, go where Allah has directed you, for we are with you. We will not say, as the children of Israel said to Moses, go you and your Lord and fight, and we will stay here. Rather, we shall say, go you and your Lord and fight, and we will fight along with you. By Allah, if you were to take us to Barq al-Gamad, we will still fight resolutely with you against its defenders until you have gained it." Essentially saying, look, we're not going to be like the children of Israel. They were promised victory. They were promised the Holy Land. And when Musa, he saved them from Pharaoh, brought them to the Holy Land, all they needed to do was to walk into Jerusalem, and the city would be theirs. But they were too scared. They had that slave mentality. They said, "You and your Lord go and fight. We've seen what you can do with the parting of the ways with Pharaoh. You go and you sort it out, and then we'll come afterwards." And then Allah was angry with that, and then they were forced to have 40 years in the wilderness. I said, "Look, we're not going to be like that as a people. We will fight alongside you, and if you take us basically to the ends of the earth, we will still fight for you." So the Prophet was very pleased with that, and some of the Sahabi said, "I wish I'd been Al-Muqdad who said that at that point in time, because that was just what was required." It was, very motivating for the whole army, because it's putting to bed all the rumours. Okay, fine. So what if it's an army? We will still fight with you. Then the Prophet, he says for a fourth time, "Oh, please, give me counsel, advise me." So, the three people who've spoken so far, Abu Bakr, Umar, Al-Muqdad, they're all Muhajir. So they're all, from the Quraish, the Quraishi caravan, the Quraishi army. So they are obviously going to be supporting the Prophet ﷺ. They've left everything. They're here. They're in for the long haul. So then Sa'd bin Mu'adh, one of the leaders of the Ansar, he stands up and he says, "By Allah, I think that you want us, as in the Ansar, to speak up." And the Prophet ﷺ affirmed that, "Yes, I'm actually looking for what you have to say in this matter." because again, going back to the pledge of Aqaba, the second pledge, the pledge of war, where the 72 of them had pledged, their pledge at Aqaba was one of a defensive pledge. We will protect you as our own. You come to Medina or Yathrib at the time, and we will look after you. We will protect you. We will make sure that we treat you as our own. So that was the promise. It wasn't. It may not be interpreted as being an offensive pledge. So what they're basically saying is, the Prophet is asking, look, you said you would defend me, and I accept that, but this is actually not, to the letter of the law, part of that agreement. So if you want, you can sort of step back, and I'll fight with go ahead with the Muhajir. If you want, then you can fight alongside, but I need to hear what you say. So then Sa'd bin Mu'adh, he goes, O Prophet of Allah, we believe in you, and we bear witness what you have said to us, and we declare in unequivocal terms that what you have brought us is the truth. We give you our firm pledge of obedience and of sacrifice. We will obey you most willingly in whatever you command us to do. And by Allah, who has sent you with the truth, if you were to ask us to plunge into the sea, we would do that most readily, and not a man of us will stay behind. We do not grudge the idea of an encounter with the enemy. We are experienced in war, we are trustworthy in combat. We hope that Allah will show you through our hands those deeds of valor with which will please your eyes. Kindly lead us into the battlefield in the name of Allah. Full stop. Unequivocal. I mean, this was what the Prophet ﷺ wanted to hear. And it said that his face beamed when he heard this. So what Sa'd was basically saying is that we're going to follow you, what come may. I mean, these are desert Arabs. They can't swim. And he is saying, if you take us into the ocean, we will follow you blindly. Okay? So, we're well pleased with you, and hopefully, all the other expeditions have been with the Muhajir. The Ansar have not been invited as part of those battalions. And he said, look, we want to prove our worth as well. We are fighting men. We want to be of those who defend you. So the Prophet, he was very happy with that, and he got the reassurance that actually now they're all in it together. So then again, he's arranging the ranks of the army. He's just making sure, and as we said before, who goes where. There's only two horses. One of them, two knights essentially. One of them Az-Zubair bin al-Awam, and the other Al-Muqdad bin al-Aswad al-Kindi. So these two are the only two knights on the sides. Then you've got Ali bin Abi Talib, who's raising the standard for the Muhajir, and Sa'd bin Mu'adh, who's raising the standard for the Ansar. Then you've got Az-Zubair, who's, as we said, on the horse. He's in charge of the right flank, being the knight there, and Al-Miqdad, the other knight, being in charge of the left flank. And at the back, you've got Qais bin Abi Sa'sa as in charge of the rear flank of the army, and the Prophet ﷺ marching as the head of command, the chief. So then, what? One of the other things that you can learn from this is that the Prophet ﷺ, he was happy to keep the Muslims in their sort of tribal allegiances. The main bond between them is the bond of Islam, and that supersedes everything. but on the battlefield they're more comfortable with the people that they know. So he's just arranging the army according to that stratagem. And the leaders are young, dynamic leaders. And the overall standard has been given to Mus'ab ibn Umair. And again, he's such a wonderful compromise, but the ideal person to be the actual standard bearer for the army, because Mus'ab, he's Quraishi, of noble descent, but he was sent to Medina to teach the people. After the first pledge of Aqaba, they said, come send us a teacher. Prophet dispatched Mus'ab ibn Umair. Within a year, Islam had entered every house, and then they came back for the following Hajj with 70 2 plus 2 who'd given the pledge, second pledge of Aqaba, and that was the diligence and enthusiasm that Mus'ab had shown in spreading Islam. So he was the ideal candidate to bear the standard. So the Prophet, they're marching. They've got the whole army on their side. They know psychologically now that they are facing an army, and they've got that intent. Everyone's behind. Everyone is geared up for that. They've put the thoughts of the caravan to one side. So the Prophet, he arrives on the plains of Badr the day before the Quraish. So he gets there on the 16th of Ramadan. And then he advances because of where Badr is and Medina is. When they reach there, he advances and he sets up camp at the nearest point. So and then sort of says, okay, let's stop here. Let's put up our tents and we're the first ones here. Let's just prepare. So and then Al-Khabab Ibn al-Munzir, now he's a tactician, and he comes to the Prophet ﷺ and he says something really beautiful. So he cautiously approaches the Prophet ﷺ and says, this place where we are camping, is this something that Allah has told you that we should do, such that we cannot move 1 inch forward or 1 inch back, or is it based on your own opinions and tactics? So again, he's very careful in how he says that. If this is wahi, then that's fine. I'm not going to argue. But if it's something that's in your realm of tactics, then I might have something to say. So give me permission. What are we dealing with here? So the Prophet clarifies, well, this is my own thoughts, my own strategy. This is what I think we should do. So then he respectfully says to the Prophet, well, in that case, I suggest that we proceed further until we're beyond midpoint of the plains of Badr, and therefore the wells of Badr will be behind us, and in that case we will have the wells and they will not have the wells, and they'll have to rely on the water that they've brought with them. So a very clever tactical move, and the Prophet ﷺ, he agreed with that, and he goes, yes, you've directed us to the best opinion. And there's another narration, much weaker, which says that Jibreel told the Prophet ﷺ to follow the advice of Al-Khabab. So that's what they did. They took the water out of the other mini wells. There's one big well of Badr, and again we talked previously how Badr was a man who'd discovered the well. It's named after him, but the one main well and then other little wells. So they took the water out of those wells and they filled them up, brought the water back in their own cisterns, and they had the water. And so they controlled the water. They could stay there as long as they wished, because they've got water. The other army will only have enough water to last them as they have brought along. They would be thinking that they would have access to the well of Badr, but that they'd be surprised that they haven't. And this in itself is a really important usul al-fiqh issue. So there's a difference between shura, expert technical advice, and wahi. And again, al-Khabbab, you talk. If this is wahi, then I'm not going to argue. But if this is in the area of mubah, permissible, where we can talk about this, I've got something to say. So then, in areas of mubah, permissible, you're allowed to take the best technical advice, technological advice. Then there are issues of shura, when as a leader you are obliged to take the counsel of experts or the majority of the people. Okay, so there are issues in the seerah where the Prophet ﷺ took advice of experts, and there are issues where he took advice of the people. For example, we'll talk about that in the Battle of Uhud, where the Prophet ﷺ had his own opinion of where it was best to fight, but he left the decision entirely on the people, and they voted. Some of the experts said that we should fight inside Medina, but the majority of people, especially the young, they wanted to fight outside of Medina, so they went to Uhud. So the Prophet put aside his own opinion, and he was obliged to follow the opinion of the majority, the shura. And then there are technical aspects where Prophet would only take specific advice on technical issues, like, for example, the building of the ditch, Khandaq, the Battle of Khandaq. Specifically, he just listened to Salman. This is how they did their built the ditch. And again, it's important to know in the seerah what aspects there are. When there's a wahi, we have no resistance in our hearts. We should not even be following our desires. It's your intention is to follow Allah for the sake of Allah and pleasing Him, not what you think is pleasing for you, not your own desire. Okay, and that's really important. So here the Prophet ﷺ is demonstrating to us that there are areas of mubah where you can seek advice and change matters, and he had no qualms about initially camping here and then moving on better advice camping somewhere else. So that's what the Prophet ﷺ did. Then they got. Then they're setting up their camp. They're setting up their sort of tents and areas. And Sa'd bin Mu'adh, he says either the night before or the morning of the battle that we should build for the Prophet ﷺ a little tent or a portico, or in Arabic a qamar, where he's able to sort of see what's going on the battlefield. And then Sa'd goes, from here, from this vantage point, you can see, if we've been victorious or not, and then everything will be satisfactory. However, in case of defeat, the Prophet ﷺ would not be harmed, and he could go back to Medina. For verily, we've left people there who love him more than we do, and would have come for help had they known about this and that he was in a difficult situation. And so the Prophet can go back to Medina and resume his job and hold counsel with them and strive in the cause of Allah with him again and again. So basically saying, if the tide turns, the Prophet can gallop on a horse or camel and go straight back to Medina, because we just came out for the caravan. We weren't expecting a big fight against an army, and there are people there who are stronger, more able, and love the Prophet ﷺ as much as we do, who will be more than happy to come and defend, to fight another day. And then at Sa'd, he assigns a squad of guards from the Ansar under his own personal command to be the personal bodyguards of the Prophet. They're going to be there defending the Prophet on the battlefield. So the Muslims, they've been sort of marching, they've got news that rather than being out for a caravan, a lightly guarded caravan, they're going to face a big army, the mother of armies. I mean, the Quraysh had never sent an army 1,000 strong before, fully armed, fully equipped, proper fighting force. So, but they're they're getting used to that idea now. They camp, and they manage to fall asleep. And again, it's quite a blessing from Allah, where the night before the most major battle, and a lot of these people hadn't expected to fight, that they fall asleep. And this was and Allah references this again in Surah Al-Anfal, that in translation, and remember when He covered you with slumber as a security from Him, and He caused rain to descend on you from the sky to cleanse you thereby, and to remove you from the whispering of shaitan, and to strengthen your hearts, and to make your feet firm thereby. So the whole night before, the Muslims sleep. And again, for us, if we've got a really important event the next day, I mean, I doubt any of us are going to see the battlefield. But minor, the battlefield it's a potentially life and death thing. But even minor life events for us, marriages, job interviews, these really significant things, people tend to be restless the night before. But Allah says, as a mercy, He made the Muslims sleep such that they would wake up fresh, refreshed, and He had a light shower on them, so they felt a physical and spiritual cleansing from that. And where they had camped, the rain had caused the dust to settle. It had made the ground very sort of firm for them, so it wasn't so dusty or muddy. So this light rain, it was like a blessing for them, and so the Prophet ﷺ, he appreciated that. I mean, he himself spent the whole night in supplication, in dua. So the whole night he's up and he's praying. The rest of the army, they're all sleeping, sound asleep. This is now Friday. Again, it would be a Friday, the 17th of Ramadan in the second year of Hijrah, as we have the calendar now. And again, this is just a few weeks after the Qibla has changed. So the Muslims, psychologically, they're focused on this. And it's said that in the dream, certainly for the Prophet ﷺ, he was shown the Quraish army to be smaller than it was, because if the army had been shown its actual size, or if he'd been shown the full army, it may have demoralized the Prophet ﷺ, and it would have definitely demoralized the Muslims. So they were shown the army to be smaller. So, or essentially that Allah had shown them a section of the army which they interpreted in their dreams to be the army. And the opposite happened for the Quraysh, in as far as when they were shown the armies in their dream, and they had a restless dream. They had when they arrived to the plain of Badr, they had no access to the well. They had a heavy downpour, so it was light rain on the Muslim side and a heavy downpour on the Quraysh side. It was muddy, and in their dreams they had also seen the army of the Muslims as being even smaller than it was. So although the army is 315 there or thereabouts, they had seen the army to be much smaller. So in them it makes them overconfident. So again, this is how Allah is preparing for the battle. But getting back to the Quraysh, so they arrived after the Muslims late in the evening, so they couldn't actually see the Muslim camp properly. And as they're approaching, Badr, one of the a son of one of the cousins of the Prophet saw a dream where he saw a crier riding towards them, shouting and screaming, and announced, Utbah has been killed, Shaybah has been killed, Ibn al-Hakam has been killed, Abu Jahl, Uqbah has been killed, and they've all been killed. All the famous people have been killed. And again, this, and then he describes the dream that blood will splatter on every tent of the Quraysh. So again, this is the psychological warfare that's going on, where the Muslims have peace and tranquility with their situation, and the Quraysh, they have this uncertainty. So they set up camp. They reach there. It's raining heavily, so they're all very miffed. So then the Abu Jahl, he sends one of their top scouts to go and do a reconnaissance mission to check out the army of the Muslims, because they know that they're camped. They've arrived there a bit later, so find out what information you can about the Muslim army. So this is late at night. So Umair, he goes out, and he is an expert scout. The reason they sent him, so he goes far and wide around the plains of Badr, gets a good estimation of the Muslim army, and again, he's doing this by stealth, but he gets close enough to see them, and whether or not this is when they were sleeping or whilst they're awake, we don't know. But then he comes back to the Quraysh and he says, okay, there are about 300 of them. So his estimation was correct, Umair ibn al-Wahhab's. So there are about 300, but I feel this is going to be a huge catastrophe about to happen. These are young men of Yathrib, and they're waiting to inflict death. Okay, they're a group of people who have nothing other than their swords. Okay, there's no armor, no spears, there's no, javelins and bows and arrows. These are just people who have come out with their swords. Okay, and so they will be vicious in their fighting. By Allah, I don't think you will be able to kill any one of them until they kill one of you. And if 300 of you die, then what pleasure will you gain? Now, do as you please. So he's got the information and he's giving advice for free. Basically saying, look, there are about 300 of them. We're over 1,000. They are going to kill man for man, at least one before you kill them. So there's going to be 300 of us are going to die anyway. And so what's the valor in that? How are you going to, even if you kill all of them, you've still lost, because these are your tribes people, these are your brothers, these are your kith and kin. And we'll come back repeatedly on this, because Uqbah, he talks about this on the morning of the battle. So Abu Jahl, he dismisses Umair and says, look, we didn't ask for your advice. Okay, so Umayyah, Uqbah, people like these, they didn't want to fight. And Umair, his counsel, look, you don't have to fight, because it's a lose-lose situation. You kill them, you've lost, because you're killing your own tribes people. There's what is there in that? So they have an estimation of the fighting. There is one other incident. There is one other person who dies before the actual fighting, and his name is Al-Aswad, and so he's the first sort of casualty of Badr. So the Quraysh, they get there the night before, as we talked about, and they haven't got access to the water, and so the Quraysh, they realise that they've been outmaneuvered by Muslims. And there's one chap from the tribe of Abu Jahl, Al-Aswad. He makes a vow: I will go and get the water. He's pumped up. They've blocked off the wells, but I'm going to go and I will get the water. This will be a moral victory for us. So I'll either get the water or I will die trying. So he attempts in his own stealth way to try and sneak into the heart of the Muslim camp and steal some water, bring it back, and that will be, as I say, a good motivation for the Quraysh. But Hamza ibn Muttalib, he sees him and kills him again. So Hamza is blessed by being the first one to draw blood on the plains of Badr, or in the pre-Badr incident. So this chap, it was true what he said. He said, I'm either going to get the water or die trying, and he died trying. So that's the state of the armies up until the morning of the Battle of Badr. Prophet, he is at the moment, he's full all night in prayer, guarded by his guards, but he's up all night and he's praying, making dua to Allah. So from next time, inshallah, we'll talk about what happens on the actual battlefield, the morning of the battle, the mubaraza, the duel, the last-ditch 11th hour attempts to stop the battle, and then the actual fighting, inshallah. So again, if you've got any questions or comments, do feel free to email them or WhatsApp or get in touch. I'm happy to answer them or address them or clarify them. And again, do make dua for us and the Ummah. And until next time, inshallah, I'll just finish off this with Allah. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. وَلَسْرِ إِنَّ الْإِنسَانَ وَلَا فِي خُسْرٍ إِلَّا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالْحَقِّ وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالصَّبْرِ. جزاك الله خير. السلام عليكم.